I think that people need to educate themselves more.
Right.
They might be against. They might this thing about being against public schooling or being against going to university has expanded to being against all forms of education at all, basically. So even self-education, if it becomes merely a self-delusion, it's not going to be helpful to the individual, right? So I think the flat Earth falls into that category. I mean, there's so many facts that you have to deny actively to believe the Earth is flat that you're handicapping yourself. I mean, you can't even explain why the sun is out later at the same longitude, but different latitudes. So if the farther north you go, the days are longer during the summer, and the shorter they are in the winter. You can't explain that with a flat Earth. You know, you can't explain the seasons with the flat Earth. You can't explain the tides with the flat Earth. You can't
So the
explain
flat Earth,
how it is we actually have things in orbit with the flat Earth. And you have to believe that everything around you is a fiction. You're basically...
it's like a micro, the macro. The whole flat Earth psyops with people believing the absurd and promoting absurd information while discounting other information.
The left wants to deconstruct reality. You know, the left wants to deconstruct reality. So that nothing is objective, everything is subjective, and they also want to base tyranny upon that. Like, I want you to call me if I'm a, let's say I'm a, if I was, this is hypothetical, if I was a man that identified as a woman, and I said you must call me a she, even though I look like a man, and in fact, if you don't, I'm going to appeal to the government to punish you for hate speech.
Well, it seems like on my end with YouTube, that doesn't come up, but if I talk about any form of white supremacy that is real,
yeah,
people then in their own brain, kind of like believing in a false flat Earth psyops, believing that they were attacked. The one reason that they could be attacked is if what I'm saying applies to their thinking process. That's the only way that a man or a woman could be offended by what I'm saying, if they identify with that mentality that I'm criticizing.
Well, and the reason why I brought up the example from the left, which is the gender theory stuff that they're pushing so hard, they're actually trying to make laws about it. The reason I bring that up is on the opposite side, you have the same irrational approach, you know, from the right. I guess they're from the right, the flat Earth people, and anybody else for that matter that believes in subjectivism, which would be like your reality is not the same as my reality. And an example of that would be like American exceptionalism, right? So like, it's wrong for them to do it, but it's okay for us to do it because, you know, we're exceptional. So even that is a form of subjectivism that undermines rational decision making in society, and that's coming at us from the right. And then from the left, you have the stuff coming in, basically the social justice warrior stuff. That's all very subjective, based on a mythology of everything in the world being, you know, the result of white patriarchy or something like that.
Discrediting real issues. Like if there's a real discussion to be had about white supremacy, then the bullshit has to be cut out. The fake false arguments has to be. If there's going to be a real argument about misogyny, as they call it, then a real argument about it, discussion has to be had. Not every man who's critical of certain behavior is this, or every woman, or every this, or every Christian, or every Muslim. We're now like developing.
It's almost like in the way that it's going, people are losing their ability to, like, you know, reason about anything. They don't want to hold any standards for logic in a conversation. And as soon as somebody starts to lose their argument based on logic, then they'll either change the subject or bring in, you know, bring in something else from a completely different angle. It seems like people want to say, like, oh well, you agreed with me on this one idea and I resonated with you on that one idea that you were expressing.
Right.
So therefore, I expect you to agree with me on everything else and I'm crushed if you don't. And it's artificial.
And it's weird because they really, really like that MGTOW video, or they really, really like that off-grid video, or my Costia County coverage.
Right.
And they like to come back a year later going, I thought you were different.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think helps, when I think about you and I watch your videos, and maybe I don't agree 100% with everything that you've ever said, but
I've never seen you go into troll mode
No,
in the way you express it. You express it in a different way.
But
if
you're not.
Right.
I mean, but the thing is, just because I don't agree with everything that you might say, and I don't even want to emphasize it all that much, because the thing is, I look at you as like an artist. So you're an artist, and you're an artist of expressing opinions, right? And an artist has to have they have to have the freedom to move around in that artistic space, right? And you're like an artist of ideas, and you know that's your creativity that's coming out in your expression, and it's like, so you get a lot of you don't get shot down just because maybe something's not logical. Like, I'm an engineer, so maybe I think everything should be logical, but I see you as an artist, so I don't expect you to have to judge everything the same way I judge everything, And I'm not offended if we don't see things the same way.
Well, one more question. So, how do you respond, or would you respond to the lower level, lower intellect that thinks that if someone isn't for Trump, they're a libtard?
If you only thought Trump would be better than Hillary because of certain reasons, and you want to give him a chance because you definitely know Hillary wasn't the way to go, that's one thing. But if you just want to bend over backwards to continue to rationalize and make excuses for different things that are not, pro-liberty, then you definitely have departed from your values, right?
So do you think the Donald Trump CNN feud is real?
I think it's real on one level and false on another level. So for example, I think that it's not just CNN that's against Trump. It's all of the major networks all work for the same deep state, conspiracy basically, or they share the same interests. So the elite media share the same interest as the political class.
How can CNN be pro-immigrant or pro-Muslim if they played a huge role in the 9/11 deception? Whether you think it's a 9/11 deception or not, even with the official story, they just amped it up that Afghans that's the place to go. And the emphasis wasn't on Saudi Arabia.
So they portray, the media chooses the angle that it wants to portray the issue, right? It chooses the narrative that it wants to do, and for a goal, for whatever its goal is at the moment, right? So, for example, if Hillary was in office and she was engaging in some of the same policies as Trump right now, they would not be making a big deal about the travel ban, for example. If Hillary was promoting a travel ban,
because I guess Obama had his own travel ban at one period, and he was also involved in expanding the drone attacks in the Middle East. And I saw protests go from this during Bush to.
See, if that's the problem with the subjectivism, is if one person is doing it, it's bad. But if a different person is doing the same
hypocrisy,
thing, it's good, right?
Right.
So their only objective is the media. All the networks have to capture audience, maintain audience by telling the audience what they want to hear.
Right.
And the reason they need to do that is they can't deliver propaganda if people tune out. So you have different stations appealing to different target audiences, and they tell those audiences what they want to hear. But then on certain key issues, they'll push the propaganda. So one example is the drone strikes in Syria recently. Not the drone strikes, the Tomahawk missile strikes in Syria recently. So, a few months ago when Assad was blamed for that second chemical attack, he was blamed, and within a couple days they said it was the Assad government that did it. And
we saw Trump at CNN saying the same narrative
and
as
then
well.
In that case, all of the stations were saying we need to do something against Syria because of this, right? Now Harvard did a study that was examining positive and negative coverage of Trump, right? In like 95% or more of the coverage on CNN was negative. Something like 60% of the coverage on Fox was negative. But when the Syria Tomahawk missile attack came up, it was over 80% positive on all networks. It was over 80% positive coverage for the missile attack, right? So even I mean, I'm talking about CNN going from 60% negative coverage to 80% positive coverage of Trump. Because why? Because they all those networks push the foreign interventionism, and whether it's because they're united in some kind of shared underneath some kind of shared control, or whether they just share a similar interest with the political class, I don't know.
Do you also feel that CNN was promoting Alex Jones this whole time, not really criticizing Alex Jones, but him and NBC News giving him a larger platform? So for those Americans that don't like Hillary and like Trump, for them to go to his channel because they've name dropped him quite a bit financially. I'd say millions of dollars in free advertising he's received from CNN. Millions.
Well, any kind of mention on media, positive or negative, of
name dropping
of the alternative media would be a benefit to the alternative media, right?
So before they would ignore, now they just bring it out and make sure his name is dropped every day.
Yeah. So I don't know what to make of that exactly, but maybe.
Well, I know you want to stay away from some conspiratorial thinking, but what do you think about the idea of them making it obvious that it's fake? For example, like WE is fake wrestling. It's not real wrestling. Mm-hmm. So if everyone's going to obsess on a WE theme when WE is based on false fighting, it almost seems like they're sending a message. It seems like they're sending a message, hey, this isn't really real. Here, let's literally make it obvious for you. Here's Vince McMahon with CNN's head imposed on top of it and get everybody worked up over a fake fight.
See, what I think happened is, okay, CNN, not just CNN, all the networks are pushing their main mission is propaganda, right? Delivery of propaganda for whatever purposes that the people that run the networks deem necessary, right? And to do that, they have to maintain audience so that they can deliver the propaganda. When they lose audience, they no longer are effective at delivering their propaganda. So, of course, they thought they were going to be able to make Hillary win the presidential election using the same methods that they used, in previous elections, and that's why they were so stunned when she lost, because their mechanism didn't work. People just started tuning out. Okay, and then what happened is they went into the immediate mode of, well, we're going to start. I mean, in my opinion, pushing this false Russian interference narrative. And without any evidence, continuing to push the Russian, the Russians hacked the elections. Hillary would have won if it weren't for the Russians and such. It's just denial of how bad of a candidate Hillary was, right? They can't comprehend, or admit how bad a candidate Hillary was, that she would lose to Donald Trump, right? So the thing is, over the last few months, that just wasn't sticking. It was like they were throwing the accusations at the wall, but it just wasn't sticking, and so now the narrative they were trying to push, that fake news helped Trump win, or that fake news was a danger to American democracy, and something needed to be done about it. Their accusations boomeranged her back around, and they were the pot calling the kettle black, or maybe they were the pot calling the stainless steel,
right,
shiny silver, metal pot black. They were the ones who were the fake news, right? Well, they have to do damage control, so only CNN now should be labeled fake news, and not any of the other networks who also engage in fake news, right? Aspects of the alternative media. So CNN is the fall guy, or CNN is the focal point of the fake news now, and they've just recognized that they have to do it because they can still manipulate people with the other networks, Fox and MSNBC.
Right. I do see things coordinated with the networks for years, going all the way back to the Bush years with talking points. That's been really difficult for people to grasp.
Yeah.
That they mere talking points, or that they play these roles where one won't be balanced. One's going to be clearly one side,
Yeah.
and the other politically is going to be clearly the other side.
Yeah, and some of the peripheral issues in society are not that important to the establishment, right? They're just wedge issues that are used to divide the population up into identity groups, like
Quadrants.
conservatives versus liberals. And so if you're conservative, then you have to be against gay marriage, for example. But if you're liberal, you have to be pro-abortion, for example. And these issues, they might be very important to the people, but they're not that important to the elite establishment, right? To them, it's just a way of being able to neatly divide groups so that they can then target the propaganda to the groups. It's like somebody who is definitely say, for example, against gay marriage, when they watch some station that's pro-gay marriage, is more likely to turn the channel and tune into the other station that's more skeptical of gay marriage, right? And then the opposite is the case for, say, abortion, right? If Fox puts on too many people who are, most liberals are just not going to tune into Fox at all anyway. But the point is, maybe these issues that really divide people aren't really what we ought to be paying attention to in terms of where the manipulation is. The manipulation is in where they all agree, right? So in that case of that Harvard study that showed they all agreed, all the networks, positive coverage of the Tomahawk missile strikes that we